think about your role as an elder. We have a wisdom, we've got knowledge and experience that young people are going to need. You know, when they say, well, I can't do this, then I say, well, you can't do it yet, but let's look at how you might practice or what you might do.
Grandparents have a huge outcome in terms of helping the grandchildren with resilience, with confidence, with knowing who they are, where they're from.
The best thing you can do for children is to give them roots to ground them and wings to help them fly.
Melissa, welcome to the podcast. Great to see you.
Thank you very much.
You and I first met, way back when at uni, and you went on and created an extraordinary business called The Art of Mentoring. You know, you became the queen of mentoring all over the world.
Okay.
If there is such a thing.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Hundreds of thousands of people have been through your programs. And then you bring out this book, which I really love, and I just laughed at your opening sentence, which was that you fumbled your way into grandmotherhood. I thought, here is the expert, and she's admitting on, it's not quite as easy as it might be made out to be.
Well, neither is motherhood.
Indeed.
I often say nobody gives you a manual for that.
No one does. Before we jump into all of this, what will our audience get from our conversation today?
Yeah, hopefully an understanding of why I wrote the book. I think about 2 years ago, I started getting quite worried about what was happening in the world and how unsteady it feels, and thinking about my grandchildren. I was concerned for them. You know, what kind of future were they going to inherit from us? So I started going into the statistics around youth and mental health and looking into what are the things they're actually worrying about. And I realised that I wasn't using my own mentoring techniques with my grandchildren. And so I thought, well, I need to actually start looking at why and how do I do that? And I thought, well, if I'm going to write it for me, I may as well write it for other people. So the book is really an exploration, if you like, of what it's like to be a young person today and how we as grandparents can be the steady presence in their lives and how mentoring techniques can assist.
Fantastic. It's a great book. I had the privilege of reading it before it was released, so I know exactly what it is, and it's really helpful. As a brand new grandparent, I find it very interesting. I want to go back to before this all started. I want to go back to your grandmother. As you say in the book that she was a huge presence for you, and she saved a fruit cannery factory. And got an award from King George VI.
Yes, she did.
That's an extraordinary story. So tell us about her to begin with.
Oh, she was amazing. She wasn't even 5 foot. She was little. I mean, I'm little, but she was even more little. But fierce, very fierce. And they lived in Leeton, and it was the Depression, and the cannery was struggling, and the fruit growers were as well, because if people aren't buying tin fruit, then the growers were in trouble. So she was, I think, president of the local Country Women's Association. So she said to the women, well, come on, girls, we're going to have to do something because the men aren't getting their act together, literally.
The first time in the world that was ever said, I'm sure.
Yeah, right. So she said, we're going to start a campaign to get in those days, the housewives of Australia to buy just two tins of fruit. So she went on radio and she started there, but she thought, well, I need to get the Sydney Morning Herald involved. So she took herself down to Sydney and went to the Herald offices and went up to reception and said, I'd like to speak to the editor. And the receptionist said, well, do you have an appointment? No, you can't see him, obviously. You don't have an appointment. So she went and found the stairs, asked somebody, what floor is he on, knocked on the door. And walked in and left with his support. And so with the help of the newspaper and the radio networks, she mounted a campaign that was so successful they had to actually ask her to stop. But that's who she was. And, you know, she was just such an incredible role model for me. I just wanted to be like her.
Was it her energy, or was it her forthrightness, or what was it for you?
Energy, yeah, and also just determination. And she just had a really good heart. She was kind and she was very caring. And, you know, she, as a grandmother, she just trusted my judgment. I never felt judged by her either. So all those qualities I just wanted to be as a grandparent.
How have you gone?
Oh, I have my moments. But, you know, I think I'm doing better than I did as a parent, actually.
That's one of the joys, I reckon, of grandparenting is you get a second chance.
You do.
And I know it's a cliche, but you can give the child back. And what I mean by that is you can have a break.
You can have
and then
a break.
come back in with fresh approach, fresh attitude.
Yeah, and we don't get triggered by the same things that the parents get triggered by.
Yeah.
So we're not locked in that daily battle of getting them to eat and put jumpers on and get their bags packed and out to school. That's, we don't have to deal with a lot of that. Well, unless we're custodial grandparents, and that's a
right. That's very, very different. That's very right. But let me jump to some stats, because you had some really sobering statistics that set the scene as to why grandparents could play a really important role. Now, some of this are Australian specific, some of them are more global, but you talk about nearly 40% of Australians who are 16 to 24 years of age experienced a mental health disorder in 2022, which was a huge jump from 26% in 2007. So COVID in between that had a massive impact. You talk about 1 in 6 Australian adolescents experience issues with loneliness and attract hugely with smartphone adoption.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting with the latest government ban on social media for under 16-year-olds. That's starting to turn around slowly. We're already getting evidence about that. But either way,
you mean the one that the kids are getting around, that ban?
Some of the kids are getting around, yeah. But I read an article in the Australian Financial Review last week, and I actually rang up the business owner just to validate this was true, because I thought this is an amazing article if it is true. This is a guy in Pittwater River who owns a fishing business and a boat hire business. And he said since the social media ban has come out, he's been inundated with parents of 14, 15, 16-year-old boys. Can they go fishing?
Oh, that's excellent.
It's extraordinary. He said, my business has never been busier because they're no longer on their phones. They're out fishing again, doing stuff that's healthy. So nonetheless, the statistics are still there, but hopefully they're dropping a little bit. And he said in the US, 1 in 3 people say that they are lacking any access of any kind to an adult mentor. Now, those 3 statistics alone suggest something's not right and we could do something about it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because the statistics around mental health are actually worse for girls than they are for boys. But in a way, I'm more worried about the boys because I think they are finding unhealthy ways to sort themselves out. And so I'm more concerned for them. I think the girls come good eventually. But, we don't have the community support. We don't have, we were talking before about, these kids are unrooted. They don't have they're just not grounded. So that's what worries me.
Yeah,
and the stats are horrible.
Rituals are missing that we
the
might
rituals
have.
are missing, The rites of passage, particularly for boys. See, girls have a natural rite of passage because they menstruate.
Yeah, there's a very clear sign.
There's a really clear, right? But for boys, what rites of passage do they have anymore?
So let's go to grandparenting. You say your early experiences, you felt like it was fuzzy. And you said that I kind of paused and stepped back rather than leaning into it. What was the realization for you of, hold on, I could do more than this and I actually have all the skills I could utilize if I want to do that?
Well, the fuzziness was because they were my step-grandsons. And so I didn't want to overstep the mark. There were 2 other grandmothers. And so I thought, well, that's not my role here. I'm not sure what my role is, actually. It was pretty unclear. But I think the younger 2 boys who were my son's children, it was at the time when my son was going through a divorce, and that was a trigger for me to think, I've got to actually step up here because they need some steady presence in their lives that, and both parents are great and they're doing a great job of separation as well as you can do it, but those boys will need extra support. So
what do you do?
I just was much more mindful about staying connected and making sure we had phone calls because they live in Brisbane and we're on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. But also a lot more listening and remembering the basics of mentoring, noticing what I'm role modelling in particular. So I'm really mindful of not being on my iPad or on my phone when I'm with them, if I can, because we're all addicted as well.
Yes, well, that's right.
Right.
That's right.
No point telling them get off it if we're sitting there scrolling on the phone.
Hypocrisy is easily seen to the eyes of the young, isn't it?
Exactly.
More clearly than anywhere else, I suspect. Yeah. This podcast talks a lot about what's possible and available in the second half of life. And what's jumped out at me when I read your book was the opportunity for grandparents is actually quite huge. And then some figures I didn't know. You said 1.5 billion people in the world are actually grandparents. That's 20%. And this is projected to rise to 2.1 billion. There's a lot of us out there. And a lot of us, not all of us have access to the grandchildren, of course, but a lot of us do. But what struck me was both sets of people benefit enormously. And I know this from mentoring, as you do too, but grandparents have a huge outcome in terms of helping the grandchildren with resilience, with confidence, with knowing who they are, where they're from. But it's not a one-way process. Grandparents benefit enormously from that whole experience.
There's just been a study come out recently talking about the brain benefits of grandparenting. So apart from the generativity and the feeling of purpose that you get from giving something to your grandchildren, it's actually really healthy for your brain. Keeps you physically healthy, running around after a toddler.
Yeah.
My back's never the same after a couple of days with a 3-year-old. So the benefits really are both ways.
Can I grab your attention for a second? I hope you're enjoying the conversation. We're a new podcast and we're growing pretty fast, so thank you everybody for listening and watching. Can I ask you to subscribe or press like on whatever platform you're listening or watching this to, because that helps us to keep growing, and then it helps us to give us shows like this. Back to the episode. So let's jump into it. You have a framework in your book called Roots and Wings, and I particularly loved the roots part of it. Walk us through the 6 different roots and 6 different wings and what that means.
So the where this came from was there's a poem that it's long, so I won't recite the poem, but it basically says the best thing you can do for children is to give them roots to ground them and wings to help them fly.
Okay.
And when I started looking at all the research around resilience and thriving and positive psychology and motivation and self-determination theory and all the different aspects, I kept being reminded about this poem and thinking, these are all roots. These are the things that it's not just children, actually, as adults, we need those things as well. And so there are 6 roots, which the first 3 are about me in relation to myself.
As the grandparent or as the
child? Well, it starts with you, right? So you can look at your own roots, but really what we're talking about is the children's roots.
Okay.
So let's talk about them. So how self-aware are they? Do they know themselves? Do they know their values? Are they connected to their emotions, to their body, and their values? What's important to me? Have they worked that out yet?
So I know who I am, I can manage my feelings, and I know what I stand for.
Exactly. So that's the first 3 roots. And then the second 3 roots are connections with the outside world. And the first connection is obvious, which is connection with family. And that's not just mum and dad, but it's extended family, grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, adopted family. But also then community, connections to your culture and your cultural background, maybe religion, place, and connection to nature. Because there's so much research now that talks about the benefits, particularly for kids, of outdoor play.
I love the line, I come from somewhere. That really jumped out at me. I was telling you a story before we started recording of my daughter Grace. She's now 25, but she was 20 months old when I first took her to Ireland, and she sat on my lap in the plane the whole way over there. And I took her back when she was 3, I took her back when she was 6, and she's been back a couple of times, and she's since lived there for a year. But either when she was 3 or when she was 6, I can't remember which one it was, but we landed at Dublin Airport, walked out of the plane, and was down the stairs onto the tarmac. But she stood at the top of the stairs and said to me, "Oh, I can smell the air. I'm back home." And I thought she was like genuinely pulling the mickey out of her dad here. But she's 3, right? And then we're driving on the coast to my parents' house. And she kept looking out the windows and she goes, "Oh, Dad, I really miss not being at home." Which was so strong for her. And then when she turned 18, after she finished high school, instead of going straight to uni, she said, "I want to go to Ireland for a year and just live there. 'Cause that's my home." Now, I'd never pushed this notion of they're my roots, so therefore they're your roots. But by nature, they're her roots.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's so important that we know where we come from. I can really understand how people who've been adopted feel that missing because they just don't know where they come from.
Yeah.
So I've been very much more mindful of telling family stories to the grandchildren, you know, the story about my grandmother. But also, you know, kids love to know about their mum and dad and what they were like when they were kids. And so there's lots of those sort of stories.
Yeah.
And, you know, I plan to take them to the family home. My grandparents lived in Goulburn and they had a big old house on a property. So, you know, we'll take them for a visit there just to give them a sense of place.
And where you originate from. My son is now 20, but again, he, like his sister, he decided to take a year between high school and going to university. And so he decided to also go to my hometown and live with my mom. So he based himself there and traveled around Europe and come back. But every now and again, I would go across and I'd meet him somewhere. But when he and I would go around Ireland, all he wanted to know was, show me the places that you did. Like which were the pubs you went to as a 20-year-old, or where did you play rugby, and so he could just get a sense of it. And again, when I look back to both of them, it's not that I was consciously trying to show you belong to something bigger or this is where you belong. But when I read your book, I went, that's what it was. That they were just making sure that they knew their roots and they really wanted to know their roots.
And there's research now that says that kids who have heard these family stories and have a sense of where they come from are much more resilient and emotionally healthy than kids who are not. Yes. And what they've concluded is it helps them place themselves in a multi-generational timeline, and they find that very helpful.
Right. So that goes straight to I'm something bigger. I'm
part of something bigger.
I'm one of many people in this dynasty line of people, and there'll be more after me as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting, isn't it?
So going to your point about folks who are adopted who may not know their exact lineage, they can still be part of something bigger.
Yeah.
In terms of my cultural heritage is from that town or city.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's the role then we play to help foster those roots? Is it storytelling or is it something else?
I think that, the storytelling, which is very much a part of good mentoring anyway, is telling good stories rather than telling people what to do. There's the skill that we call guiding, which is you tell a story and then you let the child or the adult, whoever you're mentoring, decide what they want to do with the story. It's very different to saying, well, this is what happened to me and therefore you should do it that way. So storytelling, I think, we talked a little bit before about rituals. We don't have enough rituals in our lives anymore. We've lost that as a society, I think. Exposing them to cultural experiences that they need to have so they know what they're part of.
Here's something I've been wondering about. I don't have any firm views. I've just been wondering about this. Because I also agree. There's a lot of rituals that seem to have fallen away. But they still exist in some of our religions.
Yes.
And we then tend to look at those rituals as being wrong. As in, I think we look, they're very ist, whatever the word ist is. But I think we're judging some of the rituals as being foreign to me and therefore they are whatever put in that word is. But I'm wondering, is that a symptom because we've actually just lost the wider sense of celebrating, recognizing the fact we're part of something bigger, we're a collective to begin with?
Well, I think it gives us a sense of belonging. So when you and I follow the same rituals or we share a ritual, we belong together.
Yeah.
And yes, I think religion's on the rise again, though, from what I can tell. And maybe that's why that people need that sense of belonging.
They need a sense of belonging, yeah.
More so than necessarily the actual faith.
Can grandparents, or any kind of mentor for that matter, create a ritual just between two people?
Yeah. So that's one of the things that that grandparents can do. You can have a ritual which can be when I'm with my grandsons, for example, I always read them a bedtime story. That's a ritual. But it could be the way you greet one another. Or there's a ritual, I do Wordle every morning. Whenever my older grandson's with me, then he wants to do Wordle with me. So that's become a little ritual between the two of us. So, yeah, you can create these things.
Which are unique between you and them in that
Yes.
case. Okay, fantastic.
And something they look forward to. And they'll remember that long after we're gone.
Yeah.
Oh, I used to do Wordle with Nana.
My grandparents were, first of all, three of my four grandparents had passed before I was 7. So I have very few memories. And they were quite elderly, and in fact, all three of them were sick in bed the whole time, so I didn't really have any connection with them.
Yeah.
My grandmother died much later. And my memory of her was I used to go to a place in France called Lourdes. I grew up in a very Catholic country. Lourdes is a Catholic pilgrimage. I used to go there in the summertime to volunteer and work. And she was ecstatically happy that I did that.
Oh, okay.
And so I'd come back from there. I was away for maybe 2 weeks or something. And she would sit me down and go, I want you to tell me every single thing that happened from day 1 to day 13. And she let me but I think for her, it was partly her living vicariously through me. And partly, I think she was trying to reinforce, this is really important what you're doing. I was one of the elder grandchildren, so therefore I suspect she was encouraging that behaviour as well. I suspect it was a whole mixture of things. But my memory, I have to think back to it now, my memory is, I was really important for her.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that relationship was quite special.
Yeah. Well, I think kids need to know that their grandparents think they're special.
Let's jump over to our 6 wings. I really love these, by the way. And as a professional coach / mentor, they spoke to me from that capacity. But I just love how you're orienting them towards, here's what anyone can do with their grandchild. So from a growth mindset perspective, I can learn and improve.
Yeah.
From a curiosity perspective, I can figure things out. And then the third one of 6 is from a purpose perspective, I have something to contribute, which I think is really, really important.
Yeah, it is important. So I was looking at what are kids going to need to survive in what's becoming a fairly difficult world. Lots of research on growth mindset. So I do that a lot with my grandchildren. When they say, well, I can't do this, then I say, well, you can't do it yet, but let's look at how you might practice or what you might do. So I kind of model for them, or I help them think through how to do something. Curiosity. I mean, we all need to be curious, right? And we're going to be faced potentially with things we haven't been faced with before. So if you're not curious and creative, you're not going to be able to work things out.
Yeah, you're just stuck.
You're just stuck. Yeah. So the genesis of the wings is really thinking about, well, what are the capabilities we're going to need in facing what might be a fairly difficult set of circumstances. And I think we're seeing that play out in the last month or so.
On the global stage.
On a global stage, yeah.
Absolutely. I want to go back to the growth mindset. A lot of folks listening to this may not understand the importance of the word yet, and you emphasized it. I think it's one of the most simplest and possibly the greatest gift a grandparent could teach a child is just to understand, I can't do it, yet, which opens the door to how might I be able to do it?
Because the next step from I can't do it is I'm not good enough. And once a child starts thinking like that, that's a real problem.
Yeah.
So we need to break them from that. I mean, there's an example that I actually put in the book. I had both kids at a local park, and there was this really dinky little thing that had handles and it moved in all different directions, and a little ball that rolled around You know those old games that we used to have as kids that went around this maze? And he was having a go and he said, I can't do it. I said, well, you can't do it yet, but let's have a look at. And I said, just the classic coaching technique of, okay, when you shift to the left, what do you notice happens? When you shift to the right, and back and forth, and just letting him experience and experiment. And suddenly he was doing it.
Wow.
He said to me, how come you could do it straight away now? And I said, well, I've just had more practice. I'm older than you and I've been driving a car. I've got all these micro skills that I had to learn too.
Yeah.
I didn't have all those skills when I was young.
But now he's gone away realising he could do it.
He could do it.
Yeah.
And, hopefully what I've given him is a lesson in, well, just experiment until you work it out.
Yeah. Fantastic. Which goes to your fourth point, independence. I can make my own choices.
Yeah.
Because if you know that you have the ability to keep experimenting, then they are your choices, right?
Yeah. I mean, independence, that's a really interesting one. I think this is actually a root of some conflict between grandparents and parents. Because our generation look at our kids' way of parenting and saying, these kids have no independence. You're scheduling their time 24/7. You're not allowing them to make mistakes. The world's a dangerous place, but, really let them play outside a little bit without you necessarily watching them like a hawk. So it can become a real source of conflict. And you've got this one thing grandparents are saying to me is, we've got to follow the parents' rules. We can't, even though we don't agree, we still have to do it. So how do we actually help foster independence in our grandchildren when our own children are maybe trimming their wings a little bit more? It's tricky.
Do you think parents are scared? Or if so, of what? What's the big boogeyman?
Well, I think it's stranger danger for a start. I mean, this is why kids are not allowed to play outside anymore. We used to go out until it was dark and come home when we were hungry. Yeah. And I'm not sure it's actually that much more dangerous, maybe traffic, but, if there's somewhere safe, then it's okay. So I think it's that. I think it's everything. There's a long list of what people are scared about now, geopolitical instability, climate. A lot of it is anxiety about what might happen. Mm. Well, in fact, it all is.
I got into trouble once. Well, more than once. But I got into trouble for this specific thing. So I'm flying to Ireland. I've got my two kids with me. They're now a little bit older. Maybe I'm going to say 3 and 8, or maybe 4 and 9, something like that. So we're in a contained plane. As in, the plane, if you wander off from your seat, you can only go so far, right? And so my 3-year-old son, he just wandered down the corridor of the airplane. And I thought, okay, well, he can only go 20 meters up and down. He can't go anywhere else. So I thought, let him wander, because I know he's going to come back to me. But one of the air hostesses came up to me going, like that's dreadful, like dreadful parenting. You're letting your child, like they could be taken away. And I said to her, who's going to take my 3-year-old child on this plane in the next 20 seats? And to where?
Yeah.
Now, I appreciate I'm probably a little bit more relaxed than a lot of folks, but I was just surprised that her reaction was that was terrible parenting, that you're letting your child wander by themselves.
And I think parents have those judgments all the time. You're in a supermarket and a child is acting up and, looking around. It's embarrassing. We judge ourselves as grandparents too. Am I doing a good enough job? We've got to step back from some of that judgment.
The last two in your wings, communication skills, I can express and listen, and adaptability and resilience, I can bounce back. Wow, they're just such pivotal life skills.
They are. And the last one is what worries me the most, is the adaptability and resilience. But these are skills you can learn. It's not like we're born resilient.
Yeah.
And these are skills we can teach our grandchildren.
From a mentoring point of view, under how grandparents can help their kids build wings, one thing that jumped out at me was you can, as a grandparent, you can ask questions to help them think.
Yeah.
He said, what do you wonder about this, or what might happen next? Like, you're helping the person just to expand their thinking process.
Exactly. I mean, Professor David Clutterbuck describes mentoring as helping someone with the quality of their thinking around things that are important to them. So questioning is part of that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there's a lot in the book about example questions that you can ask that help open their brains and think differently. I think, we have the benefit of a lifetime of experience, and we have that bigger picture perspective that they don't have. So when you ask a question, it's an invitation, really, isn't it, for them to broaden their minds and open up to a different perspective.
In a previous episode of this podcast, we had a guy called Pasco Ashton, who runs men's circles in the UK. But in the storytelling, he told me that every Sunday night he has a telephone call with his granddad. I think he said his granddad was 91. I might be wrong on that detail.
There's a ritual, by the way.
There's a ritual. Exactly. And the second thing was they'd pick a topic to discuss. And the topic could be the latest conflict in Iran, or it could be the price of milk, or it could be why is the gas green, or whatever. But the point is they were discussing the topic. And Pascal said this has been going on for a long time. It wasn't like a recent phenomena. But he said they're now adults, because he's a grown man with his own child. He said we are two adults sharing ideas just from different age groups.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, what an extraordinary, beautiful relationship they have.
Yeah, gorgeous. And, there's that intergenerational thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think we forget that as grandparents, our grandchildren are going to become adults, and you can continue that mentoring relationship all the way through, but it becomes a little bit more peer-to-peer.
Yes. There's an age and stage that just changes as they get older.
And our grandchildren help us with stuff too, particularly technology.
That's right. What is a remote control?
Yeah.
What do you, you've interviewed, I think it was 70 or 90 grandparents for this part of your own research. What are grandparents struggling with? Distance
is the biggest one. Living far away, so they're not somewhere where they can have physical contact with their grandchildren. That's the biggest one. I think they're struggling with understanding their role. Where do I fit? What do I do? How do I help? A lot of them, it's interesting, the grandparenting research it struck me as really bizarre that the only model I could find on different types, grandparenting types or roles, was from the 1960s. That's how old it is.
Seriously?
Seriously.
So are you now a pioneer?
Well,
in the sense of
I
what you're doing
haven't
now?
created a new protocol or different way of looking at it, but certainly it's out of date, because I used it in my survey and a lot of grandparents said, well, I don't think I fit into any of those types.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So a lot of grandparents see themselves as the fun one. They want to be the fun one. And I'm trying to give them a little push to say, yeah, fun is good, but there's actually so much more you could be doing.
Yeah, so fun and love may not be enough. Yeah, guidance is important.
Yeah. I think the other thing they're struggling with is, a lot of us are getting older as grandparents because our kids are having their kids later. So, and it's physically tiring looking after grandchildren. So setting boundaries is something that a lot of grandparents struggle with around what they can physically do.
If you're living a long way from your children and grandchildren, that's one issue in itself.
Yeah.
If you're living very, very close, I suspect it raises other issues.
It does.
Such as you're now the pseudo-parent because we're both working and therefore you're retired and you're nearby.
Yeah, and you've got nothing better to do, have you?
That's right. Your day's empty.
You don't have a life.
Do you hear that?
Yeah, I do hear that, but I don't hear that much. So the ones that I spoke to were mostly very happy to play that role if they could. But there are others who, find it an imposition. That's true.
Is there any healthy boundary in terms of assuming you live relatively nearby? Is there any healthy frequency in terms of 2, 3, 4, 7 days a week? Or is that...
I think it's idiosyncratic. You know, it's like, how long's a piece of string? It depends on your own physical health and what else you've got in your life. But from a grandchildren's point of view, is it possible to be too much with a grandparent? Probably. I don't know. I haven't looked at any research on that question.
Okay. You mentioned the book, Grandparents' Quality of Being determines our quality of doing. From a professional coach perspective, I think I understand what you mean, but explain that to us.
Look, that's the point of view that I came to from 3 decades of teaching people how to be mentors, that you can teach them the skills so they can ask good questions, they can listen really well, they can do all the things, but if their mindset and their attitude is not open, warm, you know, someone that you feel you can trust, if there's no rapport, then it's not going to work, is it? So who you're being is so important. And that's what, you know, when I talked about my grandmother, it was more about what she was being than what she actually did that was meaningful to me. So she was just kind and caring and, you know, that's who she was being.
I've often thought about, like post-World War II, there was a lot of need for men in society just go and work.
Yeah.
A lot of them came back from the war, etc. There was a long tail of pain, I suppose, anguish. And that certainly shaped our parents. That's not happening in today's society to that level. There's a lot of things happening, but that's not happening. And it feels to me that we have a second chance in the second half of our life to be someone different, be someone more relaxed, be someone more open just to go, hey, let's just have a chat rather than I've got to fit it into something else. And so when you said that the quality of being determines the quality of doing, what struck me by that was my only memory of my grandmother that I shared with you already was she made time for that conversation. And it was as much time as I needed. And I have a distinct memory of that. And so I suppose the invitation that you're asking for people here is, it's a beautiful relationship to have with your grandchild. You're going to benefit from it enormously.
Absolutely.
Society will benefit from the interaction, but just enjoy it in the process.
Enjoy it and be intentional about who you're being and what you're doing. Because I think one of the insights that I've had from interviewing lots of grandparents is the process of thinking about it with me. They've all gone away and said, you know, I've become much more intentional about how I am with my grandchildren now. I'd never thought about it before. I just did. Wasn't consciously thinking about how. So yeah, that's the invitation. Be mindful and intentional and conscious.
Is this work with grandparents influencing how you teach mentoring now?
I think the roots and wings model comes, I can see that is very valuable, not just for children. So, in working with adults, I think that's a helpful model from which you can inform how you mentor.
Yeah, it's such a grounding.
Yes.
Like you're grounding yourself, and therefore if you feel grounded or you know where you're grounded, you're more likely to help someone else be grounded.
Absolutely. It's like put the oxygen mask on first, right?
That's right. Can I just pause this conversation for a second? A lot of our listeners tell me they really love the episode and they get a lot of value from it. They're just not quite sure what to do with it. So what I have done is record a 10-minute episode. It goes out a couple of days later with a couple of key actions that will absolutely work, and the research behind them to tell you why they'll work. All you got to do is execute. Can't be simpler than that. So have a listen to the episode. It comes out a couple of days later, and let us know which ones you're doing and how they're working for you. Back to the conversation. Your book is Will Your Grandkids Be Okay? What are you hoping for that?
For the book? I'm hoping that grandparents pick it up. Maybe they're thinking that their grandkids won't be okay, and this gives them hope. So it's a very hopeful book, actually. It's not all doom and gloom. It will give them some skills, I hope, that they can put into practice. And hopefully, I mean, the end benefit that I want is for young people, actually, and for the grandparents, because there's a benefit both ways. Yeah.
I mentioned to my 20-year-old son that I was meeting you today, and your book was called "Will Your Grandkids Be Okay?" And his response was, "Well, now that I'm an uncle for the first time, I'm starting to wonder about the same question in terms of my niece and her generation."
Yeah.
I thought, wow, at 20, you're already thinking about that. So I suspect you might have more than grandparents wanting to read this book.
Well, I think there's a lot of other people. I was just bumped into my cousin just before coming here, and she's not a grandparent yet, but she's a godmother, and she's, her friends have grandchildren and she spends time with them. So she said she's already thinking about how she can put into practice some of what I've been writing about.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I love what you've done. I've always loved all the work you've done in mentoring. It's been so impactful. What question have I not asked you that I should be asking you?
That's a good question. Maybe what's next?
Melissa, what's next?
I don't know. I'm filling my life with other things apart from grandchildren, painting and doing ceramics and maybe a PhD. Maybe I need to fill the gap
Don't go down that route.
Grandparenting model of the 1960s. Yeah. But I think there's something I can do with this Roots and Wings model for adults, so it's probably another book.
Fantastic. Love that. I'm going to put the grandparenting type question back to you. What would the 80-year-old version of you be asking of you now if they could? If they could get a line of thought to you, what would she be asking you? Asking
or telling? I think she'd be telling me, don't lose energy for getting this book out there because, marketing is a bit of a slog. Asking, did you do what you wanted to do? Did you put enough effort in? That's interesting. That's just come up this moment, right?
There you go. Yeah. She's a wise woman.
She's a wise woman. Yeah, don't give up.
Brilliant. My last question for you is, given everything we've talked about, given the importance of this topic, what would your last few words of wisdom be for our listeners?
Well, it doesn't matter if you're a grandparent or not, grandmother, grandfather. Think about your role as an elder in society, because I think we have a wisdom, we've got knowledge and experience that young people are going to need. So start thinking about how you can bone up on some of that.
Melissa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Pod.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to subscribe or like on any platform that you're watching and listening to. It means a lot to us. And if you have any comments, please drop them into the comment section. Of course, share this episode with your friends. We know they love that. And in the meantime, don't let the old man in.